Hi, everyone, and welcome to this esports psychology podcast with me, your host, Matthew Ashford. I'm a chartered sport and exercise psychologist working in the United Kingdom, and I've been working in professional esports for the last 4 or 5 years. And that was the inspiration for this podcast series. I wanted to understand what it was like to compete on the mental side of competition by speaking to the players, coaches, and parents who lived that experience themselves. So, without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce this week's guest on the podcast, Mishi. Mishi is a professional League of Legends player from Sweden who has been competing on the European circuit for the past 5 years. Currently, Mishi is the bot laner for Team BDS Academy, who compete in the NFL. So, Mishi, privileged to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Mishi, it'd be great just to get to know you a little bit better and understand a little bit about your background, maybe how you got into League.
Mm-hmm. Well, I started playing League at a very young age. I started playing the game in season 1, and obviously back then I was 8 years old, I think, and I didn't really understand the game that well, but it's just been a game that I've always come back to and kind of played a lot. And I didn't start getting into the competitive side until around 2020, 2021. At the time, I graduated from high school, and the same time COVID hit, and it kind of just made it so I had nothing to do because it was very hard to get a job, and I started trying to play League for fun.
So actually you like almost fell in like so you weren't really planning on maybe going competitive, but actually just COVID happened and couldn't get a job, and you felt, oh, this is really enjoyable. I think actually maybe I can make something more of playing League.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was looking for jobs because I didn't really want to keep studying, and I found a job at the same time as I got into my first team, kind of. So I was doing both at the same time, and it was quite stressful because I was working a 9 to 5 and then playing scrims and officials on top of that. And I set my goal that if we would make playoffs that season, then I would quit and focus on League because I was actually enjoying it quite a lot. And that's basically how my career started.
And I mean that's a lot in one season, isn't it? To have a job full time and to be playing scrims and officials. I mean, talk me through that. How did you find that initial entry into sort of competing and having to balance those two things?
It was really difficult, to be honest. A lot of mental strain, and I was very tired all of the time. Yeah, I feel like the games that we actually lost took way harder mentally at the time, just because I wanted to win really badly, of course. And yeah, I mean, I was putting so much energy into it, and more energy than I probably had, just because I enjoyed it. But I'm happy I did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing, isn't it? That you actually thoroughly enjoyed competing, even under all that stress and pressure of having to balance, a job on top, right?
Yeah.
So, it's interesting your sort of pathway into professional play. Did you always aim to go and become a competitive player, or because sometimes I hear from other players who sort of they always felt like they knew the second they picked up the game they wanted to be a professional, right? But what was your sort of timeline of that?
No, not at all. I just enjoyed the game a lot. It wasn't even the only game I played. Like, I was mainly just playing with friends, and I think I started playing like a lot of solo queue and a lot of ranked around season 7, season 8, so like 2017, 2018, around the time I started high school. And I was still just focusing a lot on my studies and spending time with friends. But I was quite good at the game, so I was still like relatively high elo, despite not spending too much time on it. And that's why I decided to, when COVID hit, just try playing competitive for fun, because I had always been quite a high rank and I basically had nothing to do for almost a year. So
Yeah. Fantastic. So what do you put down your sort of talent development to them? Because I've spoke with other players who would recommend actually that if you're someone who wants to be a top level player, you should be grinding the game from an early age. Really sort of
yeah,
putting everything into it. But you're sort of saying there that actually was sort of like the opposite, right? You kind of was getting on with the everyday life, like the social things and all those things that you wanted to have a balanced life. So
yeah.
what do you put it down to the fact that you're actually able to make it and then actually make it to a quite high level?
I mean, I think there's like different levels to it, right? But
Mm.
you don't have to start grinding at an early age. You don't even have to play the game at an early age, in my opinion. I think the easiest age to like actually start learning a lot is when you start getting to like 16, 17, 18 years old, right? Because I think your brain has developed way more, so it's way easier to pick up things in the game. Like, sure, it's good to grind and like get the basics down when you're like young, but you're not really learning anything when you're playing the game when you're like 12, 13, 14. Like, you're playing to play, not understanding the game to the same extent.
Mm.
So I think it obviously helps going into the game earlier, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's like necessary at all. Um, but if you are challenger when you're like 15 and you are fully focused on league, of course that person will have a higher chance of a better career than someone who starts trying when they're older, right? Like sometimes
Yeah.
I look back at it myself and I'm like, maybe I should have went into esports before I graduated high school, because my goal at the time was just I want to graduate, then maybe I can try playing league without really putting like much thought into it, because I thought it would take up time and I needed the time to study and you know. But especially in the beginning when you start out playing esports, you don't spend like full days just practicing. It's more like, okay, you play in the evenings because things people actually have things to do during the days, right?
Mm.
um so if you're actually going to start playing esports, I think don't be scared to just step you like into the scene and try to find a team, because in the beginning usually you only practice with the team for like 3 hours a day, and it's usually between like 7 to 10 in the evening. So usually you will have like time for it, and you don't even have to play all days, right? So
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess like you're saying this as well, like you don't actually there's not much point in, like you say, like playing league, before you graduate and stuff, because actually all that um all that time that you could be playing, like you're only really gonna be playing in the evening anyway, aren't you, when people actually can get on. So there'll
yeah.
just be a lot of dead time around. Um so do you think there's a sweet spot in that, in terms of like when it's best to be playing league? Because you said there that at a young age, players actually might not be able to actually think like strategically enough about how the game works, right?
Yeah.
um, as they get a bit older. So, is there things that you can master at an early age, like the basics, but then actually there's a sweet spot where you really should be playing during that age range?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you will become better at the game as like with your clicks and how you move your character and like just playing the game. But League is obviously a very deep game. I think it's one of the hardest games generally, especially the esports aspect of it.
Yeah.
And it's like playing like football combined with chess or whatever you want to compare it with. And obviously, if you're good at dribbling, even though you don't understand the like the full extent of how football is supposed to be played when you're a kid, you can still be good at football because you're good at dribbling, right? And the same principle kind of applies to league, in my opinion, to where if you're good at just playing, it's more beneficial for you when you learn the game later. But I think between the ages of like 16 to 20, if you actually want to go pro, you should definitely be playing during those years. But if you like haven't been playing from the age of 10, you shouldn't be like demoralized and think, oh, I will never be able to do this, because a lot of people that I started talking to started playing when they're like 17 or something, and
Oh yeah.
then they're quite smart, so they go from unranked to hitting like diamond within the first year, because they actually wanted to play the game, they enjoyed it, and they understand how it works. So they don't spend several years being like lower ranks, because they just went into league and learned the game because they're older, so it's easier to learn.
So it is actually something you can, yeah. So actually, it can actually be more beneficial to get into it maybe a little later, like say when you've like developed that level of intellect, to get
Yeah,
into
I
the
mean,
game.
from the just like pure game sense point of
Yeah.
view, I think it's easier to learn it at that age. But
Ah.
yeah, obviously mechanics like dribbling, it's still good to do.
And if you look at, like, I feel like, it's interesting, right? Because if you line up the amount of hours you played um, before you went and played competitively compared to maybe others, that may probably be less than, what others, and they haven't got to that level. So
Yeah.
what do you put it down to? Like, is there something mentally there, or in how you've approached the game, that you think was sort of gave you a bit of an edge into
I
getting
mean,
into the competitive.
Yeah, I think League is a very mental game when it comes
Mm,
to practicing and grinding solo queue. I think a lot of
mm,
people halt their performance a lot because they focus on winning more than improving, especially when they are at like lower ranks. And they care a lot about just how their profile looks, like what their
mm,
win rate is, what rank they are. And I think if you just improve, then your win rate will naturally improve and you shouldn't care too much about it. Like
mm,
that's never my mentality either. Like I have certain moments or certain accounts that I climb only trying to win, right? But in
mm.
general, I try not to care too much about my win rate because it's kind of meaningless. Like you get stuck in bad habits. And if you just start blaming your teammates and you're like, oh, I should have won this game, like, of course it's good to be frustrated, but you should always just focus on yourself, focus on what you can do better. And I think that's like the one of the three main aspects in League and why it's a hard game, because you need to be good with micro, like dribbling, like just playing the game, macro, game understanding, and how to play the map. And even if you're good at those two things, you still need to have a good mental as well, because
Mm.
if you don't have a good mental, you will be not be able to focus. So it's like three things that are very important, and you have to balance them all out. And the best players are really good at all of them. And you will never
Yeah,
be able to become the best if you only have a good mental and only have good map understanding, but you aren't able to click good, right? Or if you're able to click really well and you never give up, but you don't understand how the map works. Like that's just the holy trinity of League.
yeah. I like that. I like that idea of Trinity League. That's a great way of putting it. And they all link in, don't they? Because something
Yeah,
really fascinating you said there is that actually your mental kind of supported your micro and macro development, because you were saying that actually like rank and win loss doesn't actually help you to improve, right? You're kind of focusing on the wrong things. So,
yeah.
but you know, I've worked in professional players for a long time, and that's still something that can, you know, be on players' minds. Like, so is that always something that an attitude you took in the early days? And did you feel like any different than the majority of league players who obviously would focus on those things like win ratio?
I mean, yeah, kind of. Like I always played very few games with very high win rates, and
Mm,
I always improved very quickly. Like when I started playing the game again, like season 7, I instantly hit diamond for the first time, and the next season I already hit master, and then like when I hit master, I was like 64% win rate or something first time hitting master, and I think it's like a mix of me not overplaying, not getting frustrated. Like I would only play like 1, 2, 3 games a day maybe as well,
mm,
which makes it so I don't get this 10-game loss streaks because I'm just frustrated and I keep playing. And I think last year I also hit 1700 LP or like rank 7, and I had the same mentality kind of. I woke up early, I played like 2, 3 games, and then I took like a 4-hour break, and then I played like 2, 3 games, and I was always playing with full focus, and
yeah.
I managed to climb really high. And yeah, like playing a lot is not always good. If you're playing too much, you will not be able to focus, and if you can't focus on what you're doing, you will not improve, usually.
Mm,
At least not to the
yeah.
extent you could be improving. It's not only about the time you put in, but it's what you do with the time, right?
Yeah, that's a really way of saying it. And actually, that led me on to the next question. Sort of like, what is, you know, in those 3 hours, right? Like you say, right? It's kind of in some ways you avoid all the pitfalls that come with playing for a long time, right? Because people can get too frustrated, like they say, go on a lose streak. And then the more you kind of, like you say, you get angry, the less you're going to care about those mechanical things you need to be working on, right? The more you're going to get
Yeah.
in your head. So, what is two questions really, actually, Mishi? First, what is improvement for you? Um, and also, has improvement changed for you as you've kind of become, you know, gone up the levels? You know, do you see improvement different now at a professional player than when you did when you first went into the competitive scene?
Mm, and improvement to me is, I mean, the TLDR of it is basically how well you play when you're not focused, or like that's how you see improvement at least. Like obviously improvement is just you getting better, but like there's something called autopilot, and that's how you play when you're not really thinking about the game, right?
Mm,
And your baseline for playing is how good your autopilot is. Like a lot of times if I just queue up and like for a normal game, like not playing ranked, and I'm playing versus like worse players, they will be like, oh my god, how can you try so hard when you're just playing like this and you don't get anything for winning? But it's just like my autopilot. Like I do all of these things without thinking about it because
Mm,
it's engraved in my head, right?
mm,
And I think improving your autopilot is like basically what makes you really good. And it's the same when you're playing like competitive, right? Because if you get stressed out in certain situations, you might get overwhelmed. And the things that make you a good player is, well, how good is your baseline when there is stress on you, when you're maybe not in the most comfortable situation, you're like on a stage with light shining in your eyes, and
mm,
it comes down to how good your autopilot is. And
mm,
improvement, I think, goes better the like longer you, or like the higher level you get to, kind of. It's way easier to see like what other people do to win versus you, right?
mm,
I think it's a very good thing to look at what other people do that are already good. You can also look at like replays or Twitch streamers. I think my biggest improvement came when I got into esports, because that's when I had my first coach. And even though
mm,
the coaches aren't like the greatest at that level, it still gives you a different perspective. You still get things you haven't seen or heard before.
mm,
And even if you don't agree with something, I still think having a second opinion is really good because it makes you think. And one of the biggest things for me in improvement is always questioning everything. Why?
mm,
Like, why are you doing it? Why is it good? Why would it be bad? And if you always ask yourself why on every single play or every single thought you have, you will get like an answer. Or if you don't have an answer, you can try to find an answer. And then you
mm,
can see if you think it's correct or if you think it's not correct, or what you should do instead. Like, I'm pushing this wave. Okay, why? And it's a very simple question. Okay, I want to just crash and base. Okay, but why do you want to crash and base? Is it a good base? Like, if you just keep asking yourself why, you can start a very deep rabbit hole on what is good, what is bad. And if you realize you don't know, then go ask someone that you think do know, or have a conversation with someone, right? And
yeah.
that's how I think improvement is easiest.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. And there's a few things on that as well. I mean, the first thing that came up for me was how open-minded you are as well, right, Mishi? So you was like saying there that I'll go watch better players, right? Like if I get beaten by someone, I'm not gonna take that personally, right? I'm gonna find out what they're doing because I wanna do that myself, right?
Yeah.
And then also your willingness to take a perspective from coaches. And I've seen that in the past where, sometimes players can be a bit like, yeah, but are they at my level and should I be listening to them? Do you know what I mean? So your actual willingness to listen to different perspectives goes a long way there.
Yeah.
And on improvement, there we're talking about those why questions, right? Like, why am I doing this? Why is that so important? That ability to ask yourself why, and why does that actually lead to improvement? Do you feel?
I mean, like I said, I just think it sparks like conversation and thought about the things you are doing, right? Like, you could
Mm,
be doing something for 10 years without asking why, and maybe you're doing it all perfectly, right? And maybe
mm,
everything is correct, but if you've never thought about why you're doing it, I don't think it's good. And if you start asking yourself the questions of why, it just leads to better understanding if you're doing it correct. And if you're not doing it correct, you
mm,
will start doing it better, or get a better understanding of it in that sense. And that's why I think
yeah.
it's really important.
It reminds me of that thing that a coach once said to me is, have you coached the same year 30 times or have you coached for 30 years? Right? There's a big difference there, isn't there?
Yeah.
So would you say that you're quite reflective and you think that's a characteristic of the best in league, that they are the ones that spend a lot more time thinking through their decision making?
I mean, I think so. Yeah, I think it's very important to be open-minded. Like, if you aren't able to take in advice,
Mm,
especially when you get to higher levels, like, my coach is not always correct, and it's obvious, right? And not everyone in my team is always going to be correct. But if you are 5, 6 people together that are all open-minded, then you can actually have a discussion, right? And you can come to the best solution. And yeah,
mm.
it's that's how you improve individually and as a team.
Yeah, that actually brings me on to my next question, really about the team, right? So I think this would be really good for people to hear as well, who maybe haven't played league and don't have an insight into the professional level. What does it take for a professional team, like in the LFL or other leagues you've been in, to be successful? And what do you think it is mentally that a team needs, like the essentials for them to have a chance of performing at their best?
I mean, I think one of the most important things is just how you get along as people. Because you can be five really good players, but if you don't have a good team atmosphere and people are constantly upset with each other, uh, it's not really gonna be good. It's not really gonna work out. And I think everyone has to do their own duties, I guess, and like just make sure that they are doing what they need to do. That's like the baseline. Be able to obviously take criticism is very important, but also to give criticism, not to be too like not to attack everyone. So every time they do a mistake, right? Sometimes it could be needed. If I tell you to do improve something like 50 times and you're still not improving it, of course you shouldn't be like, oh, you really have to do this better. Like you have to get like harsher, right? But in general, be able to give criticism, be able to take criticism is like very important in my opinion. Um, and then just like be a good teammate, like and be friends. And I think a lot of teams can have good players, but if they don't get along, or like if there's like just problems within the team and you're not having fun, then I think that is the biggest failing point a lot of the time. Because you have to keep in mind that these people you're spending like 10 hours a day with them, minimum, almost 7 days a week. So
Yeah.
if you really dislike the atmosphere, it will also affect your performance and your willingness to like talk to your teammates and everything like this. So I think that is the main thing for me that is very important.
Yeah, actually, when you put that into perspective there about 10 hours, 7 days a week, I was thinking like, yeah, you better hope you can sort of get along with a teammate because that can be excruciatingly
Yeah.
painful, I'm sure, right? I mean, it'd be good to get into those three or four things you mentioned there because you mentioned about relationships, you mentioned about duties, openness to feedback.
Yeah.
Let's start with the relationship because that's like the one you ended on and it's particularly key. Building friendships and relationships. Two questions really. One, have you been in an org where you feel that's been, or have you seen things that have been done maybe by coaches or staff that has been able to build those relationships up, like made it easier to get on with teammates? And my second question with that is, how come that has such an impact on the team? Is it because league's a really team-based game, or is it around cultural stuff in the team as well?
Mm. I mean, I think it's very hard for coaches to like force people to like each other, right? Like at the end of the day, it's the coaches and the managers' job to make a good project, right? And with a good project, also, it's not only about people's like skill level. Like you can put the five best people in the world together, but if they all hate each other, it's not gonna go as well. Like they will do well, right? But there's a high chance that they get beaten by worse players that have a good team environment, right? Obviously, there are a lot of things that coaches do, like team building exercises. There are boot camps. Obviously, if you're like in a gaming house together, like the entire year, it helps because it becomes more human than just talking to each other through a computer screen.
Yeah.
But like usually it's like those things. It's like you play party games together. Like you just do things to try to have fun, to build more of a friendship, and not only have like a professional work relationship, right? And I
Mm.
think that's like, I mean, they do that in real jobs as well, right? Like team building and stuff like this to have just a better atmosphere. But I think it's very important within league.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, it's just since you're spending so much time with these people, if you really don't get along with them or you don't like things they do, and especially then it comes back to like the criticism thing because it's not only gameplay related, right? Like if you and I would be in a team together and it really annoys me that you act a certain way, I have to be able to tell you that as well, right? Because
Mm.
otherwise it's just gonna keep bothering me more and more, and if I don't tell you about it, you're not gonna, it's a higher likelihood that you stop or change something if I tell you that, hey, this really annoys me, right? um, so it's just the fact that you are spending so much time together, and yeah, if you're annoyed over one thing, it will lead to you getting annoyed over other smaller things that happen.
It's a cumulative effect, isn't it? Again, it's like I say, it's
Yeah.
not just the one thing, but it's within everything else going around. And I remember working with a team, and they really enjoyed like this kind of what they call like empty the backpack sessions, right? Where they felt like have an open space just to tell their teammates what they thought about certain things, and everyone to take it on board because, like you say, right, it builds relationships. And I always feel like, if your friend does something that annoys you, you're more likely to forgive them. But if a stranger
Yeah.
does something that annoys you, you're more likely to get annoyed, aren't you? So it makes a big difference. No, fantastic. Well said. And the other two as well, right? The other 2 points had more to do, I guess, with league itself, but duties, sticking to their duties. And you said that's a baseline as well, right? So
Yeah.
what do you mean by sticking to their duties?
I mean, just doing what's expected of you, right? Like, if I am doing really well, like individually, it's easier for me to go into more team things if it's going well or if it's going bad, right? Like, because it's a team game, but it's also a lot about the individual performances, right?
Mm,
And I think if you're trying to do too much for the team, if you're like not able to do enough individually, then it becomes like hard because like you could be losing and you're like, oh, what do I have to do for us to win? But then you might lose it like yourself, because you're focusing more about what the team needs and less on what you need. And it can make your performance worse individually.
How
Um,
does how do you get the balance right there, right? Between being for the team, right? Because me, like not being an expert in league, I'd be like, right, everyone should be all for the team, but actually, there's a part of doing your job really well as an individual in the team.
yeah.
How do you how have you noticed that balance, or yourself have got that balance right?
Um, I mean, it's quite hard to always get it right, I would say. Like, obviously, there are a lot of things you have to focus on. Um, but I think it's just the baseline is that you always just have to be at your best individual level. And I think it's a little bit like when you're at on an airplane and the oxygen masks fall down, that you have to put on your own mask before putting on the person's next to you. Like
Mm,
you shouldn't put all the effort and energy you have to try to help other people, um, because like even though it's a team game, maybe it's really hard for you to do this and you will lose a bit in yourself, which might make you lose confidence, play worse. And even though
mm,
it's a team game, the people watching you will also see that you're playing worse, right? Which can also impact your chances of getting a better team in the future. So you have to balance the fact that you care a lot about your team to also just care about yourself, because it's a very competitive sport, right? And at the end of the day, even though we all like each other in every team I've been in, everyone would probably put themselves first. If they got an offer to go to the highest level and leave the team, I think most people would take that, right? So you have to remember that yes, it's a lot about the team, but you have to put yourself first a lot of the time. Uh,
absolutely. No, well said. And I think as well, right? Like they can naturally be in opposition, but you want them to sort of work together. Can you think about as a teammate what you've done that you think actually, oh, actually that really helps my teammate to get the best out of themselves on their individual duties? Like, do you think there's a responsibility of teammates to assist with that?
I mean, you can obviously give advice. I think it's more of the coach's jobs, right? I think
Mm,
it can also feel worse as a teammate getting like too much criticism from another teammate, right? Uh, might make you feel stupid sometimes if like my jungler tells me how I should play my lane because
mm,
it's what I'm supposed to be good at, right? And
right.
I would hope that I know more than another player on my team what I should do. Um, but yeah, like more, I think it's more when it comes to map play, I guess that it's easier to give suggestions and yeah. But then you would usually also like show it with a replay of what a better team does and stuff like this. But
That's a
it's
good point, actually. Yeah.
yeah, I mean there's a lot of things you can do to actually help out your teammates, but you should just make sure that you're doing what you need to do first, I think, in a lot of
Mm,
cases.
yeah, absolutely. Well, at least, I mean, we've got a couple of minutes left, but there's two questions in there that I'd like to ask for you. The first one is about the feedback, actually, because you just picked up on it there as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you think a team develops that culture within the team where people are, because you're very open-minded, right? So I feel like
Yeah.
your natural disposition is to be open and seek out that. But it seems so crucial for a team to get the best out of each other. How does a team develop that openness to feedback? And maybe actually it'd be good to highlight maybe one of the two things that teams probably shouldn't do if they want
Mhm.
to develop a culture of feedback with each other.
I mean, I think it's just something you have to like. It's not something you develop per se. It's more like something that has to be there, in my opinion. And in the teams that I have had the best experiences with when it comes to improvement, it's said on the first day. If you have a problem, say it. And obviously, not everyone is gonna have an easy time always doing that. And that's when you said earlier you can have like these talks where you just like vent to each other about frustrations and stuff like this. But it's just something that I think it's a part of esports in a way. Like you just have to be able to give and take criticism. And if somebody comes up to you and says, I think you're doing this really bad, you shouldn't get defensive, even though sometimes it's hard for certain people. You have to think about the fact that this is your teammate. He's telling you this because he wants to win. He wants you to win and he wants everyone to improve. He's not saying it because you always lose lane. Like obviously there are ways to say it as well. If I go up and tell you that you always do this mistake and you suck,
Mm.
that's not good. But yeah, like just be honest with each other. And if it's a mistake you see a lot, well, like of course you should tell the person about it. And if that triggers that person, that's his problem, not your problem. And you have to take it up with coaches and team atmosphere and just make him know that, well, you're not trying to say that he's a bad player, but he needs to fix this, right?
And that's the thing, though. Like you say, if those expectations are set at the beginning, then people know what they're going to get from their teammates. And absolutely, I
Yeah.
think there's always like a responsibility on behalf of teammates to put it across in the nicest way. But it can be hard, right? Because constructive feedback is meant to be honest,
Yeah, yeah.
and you want to get all that in.
I mean, I don't think you always need to be nice. You just shouldn't try to take someone's confidence away. Like sometimes
Yeah.
you have to be harsh. And
Mm.
I think, especially in other cultures, like in LCK or LPL, which is like the Korean league and the Chinese league, right? Their coaches are way more stricter. I think Europe is very like sugar coated. And to me, that's not necessarily good because you need to learn from your mistakes, right? And I think that's why China and Korea are also way better because I think that is the best way to do it. People in Europe and North America are like trying to be too nice to each other, which
Mm.
is good from time to time, but it's not the best. And
But
yeah,
that's the thing,
like
isn't it?
in
So,
psychology, usually it's also like if you get punished, even though it's like weird, like if you get an electric shock instead of getting candy when you do something right, you will learn faster if you get the electric shock, right? Like correct it.
mm. And that's the thing as well. It's like it's almost like rather than sort of having to be really nice with the feedback. It's almost getting people more used to honesty with each other and almost
Yeah.
getting more with being uncomfortable. It always reminds me of the saying that if people can't truly be honest and help step other people out their comfort zone, it's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Like you're gonna, you're gonna be able to do a lot of changes, but it's not gonna make a big difference if people can't be really honest.
Yeah.
Great machine. Just for time. So my final question, which is sort of if you go back to that 12-year-old you who was playing League, what's one bit of advice you would give him that you think would set him up to have a successful career as a professional?
Mm, I think it would probably have to do with confidence. I've always been a very like humble person, and if I met people in the beginning when I got to higher elos and when I started out playing competitive, I always thought, "Oh, this guy is so good," and that was one of my main struggles in the beginning because I just thought highly of people. Uh, and I think the higher you get in the league ladder, you realize that well, they aren't that good, and even the best players they make mistakes like constantly. And like last season, I hit the like rank 1 AD carry on the server, and I'm playing in LFL. I'm far from the best AD carry in LFL, right? But I don't think there are that many people in Europe that are better than me. And I would just like tell myself that just be confident in yourself and yeah, don't doubt your abilities. Just play your own game. and I think that has helped me a lot throughout the years. Not thinking that people are good when you like. I think it's like this improvement chain where you think you are good until you reach a certain level, right? And then you
Yeah.
realize how bad you are when you get to like diamond, and you're like, oh, I'm diamond, I'm really good at the game. And objectively, like you're good at the game, right? Like you're top, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 percentile of players. But in comparison to like the highest level players, it's not even comparable. You realize how much more you have to learn to become good. And now, like when I'm at the top, like I think I'm good, right? But it's easier to think that other people are bad than to think that I'm good. And it's just always the mindset I've had. So it's just to tell myself that I am actually good and just focus on the fact that not everyone will be better or not everyone are gods, right? Yeah.
That's a great way of putting it as well, isn't it? Because like you say, it's like, it's not the whole picture, is it? Like, it's sort of like someone can look really good at a certain level, right? But like, as you get to that level, you realize yourself, actually, oh my God, there's so much more to be good at. So
Yeah.
they're never really as good as I always made them out. And also, yeah, like you say, like having that self-belief in yourself. Because also there's a reason you get to those levels as well. So it's only logical that you believe and have that confidence in yourself. So it's nice for you to say at the end that you believe you're one of the best AD carries in Europe, right? Because factually, is the case, right? You know, with the level you're at. So beautiful. Well, Mishi, thank you so much for your time. It's been
Thank you
incredible.
for having me.
Where can people find you if they wanted to watch you play, or contact you, or?
I mean, I have a Twitter at Mishigulol. My DMs are open, so if anyone wants to ask something, you can just send me a DM. You can follow me. I usually post about what games I play and if I swap teams or whatever. I think that's the easiest way.
Great. All right. Brilliant. Thanks, Mishi. Thank you for your time. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.